in the house, and she tells my grandfather, "Pa, you know, I got sick all the way over here just to see you."
That's what Grandma Margaret said that.
That was Aunt Margaret.
Times that she threw up.
What?
She counted how many times she threw up and she told.
So anyway, but that's your family history on that side.
And you know, Mom told me that at Ellis Island, they used to separate them and put them in these holding units, and they were like cyclone fences. And she was terrified because she thought they were going to keep them there. You know, it was just until they got processed. But she said she remembered being so terrified that they were going to be locked in these cages for I don't know how long. But it must have been very scary for them.
Yeah.
And on the manifest, she was like 11 or 12 years old, and they had her occupation as housewife.
Auntie Rosie was Hope's age when she came.
Yeah.
Can you
Pop.
just imagine?
Yeah, I hope so.
Did you ever see the records for
Yeah,
Grandpa
we
at
got
Ellis
copies
Island?
of the manifest, the ship manifest.
They got a
I have a
platform.
lot of documentation
Yeah.
that Sammy's seen. When Deanna comes out, if you want to help me, we'll scan it. You can put it on there.
Okay.
Oh, that'd be cool.
So
But
Yeah,
you know,
Grandpa Vito's discharged from the Sicilian Army. Their crossing papers.
When
they
you scan
came-
those, can you send those out
I've
to
got
everybody
And
too?
their birthdays, when they got to Ellis Island, got changed to January
Oh, that
1st and
was
January
unusual.
2nd.
Yeah.
Those weren't their grandma's
really?
birthdays.
Mm-mm.
Oh, that's funny. I got pictures of Daddy in his uniform from the
Yeah.
First World War.
well, yeah, we got.
As the United States Army as a doughboy.
Yeah,
in
my
France.
dad was, you know, he had 3 brothers and 1 sister.
No,
He had,
Sammy. He had
Sam, Vito, and Carl, and a sister Ann, and he was the oldest. Excuse me.
one of them passed away.
I don't talk about the ones who passed away.
You're talking about Daddy's family.
What?
You're talking about Daddy's family.
Yeah, I'm not talking about the ones who died. I'm talking about the ones who lived. Okay,
Maybe they should be sitting closer together.
3 brothers and a sister.
It's typical.
It's a Sam thing.
Been doing it to me all my life.
I do it too. I
My
get the
dad,
Sam.
my dad came over first. He came over when he was 18 years old. He was born in 1892. He came over in 1910. He was 18 years old, and he came and immediately moved into the old neighborhood on Milton Avenue, right near the St. Philip Benizi Church, the old neighborhood, and took an apartment. And he brought his cousin, and these guys all worked on the Chicago Northwestern Railroad. They lived in the railroad cars. They would go up to Harvard and sleep in the railroad car all week, and then come home to Chicago on the weekend. So I mean, excuse me, the railroad cars parked in Woodstock, Illinois. So my dad, who had got to school when he was a kid, taught himself to read and write Italian phonetically. He also, by the way, learned how to read and write English. But he would write letters for his buddies, you know, to the old country and like that. So they lived like that until World War I started, and there was a draft. My dad was not an illegal alien. He came through Ellis Island, so he was subject to the draft. And the height to go into the army was 5 feet. My dad was 4'11".
Oh, no.
So he's at the YMCA on Army Street in the draft board, and the guy takes a look at him. He says, "You're too strong not to go in the army." He went. And he transferred to Fort Hood, Texas, and then from Fort Hood, Texas to New Jersey, and then to France. So
Waco, Texas.
excuse me, whatever. No, we know. You know,
No, because there's a story connected with Waco.
well,
Are we gonna
I'm not for that. So, so he went and served the army in France and automatically became an American citizen. When he came back, my mother and her 2 sisters and my grandmother had moved into the same street that my my dad was living on, and he spotted Mary, and he was 10 years younger than my mom, and he went over to my. Well, I'm not much different. My wife and I.
7 years older.
Excuse me.
What?
Mama and Daddy were engaged when he went into the army.
No, that's not the point. Please stop interrupting me. I'm
But
sorry.
wait a minute, did you just say that Auntie Mary was 10 years older?
Younger.
Younger?
What is she telling me?
Because you said that he went over to see Mama when she first came. And
When he came
was in
back
the
from
army.
the
I
army.
didn't see it. I didn't see when he first
Oh, I'm
came.
sorry.
Sorry, you misunderstood. Ultimately, he spotted my mother on the street and he wanted a quarter. And he went over to their house and he told my grandmother and grandpa that they would like to court my mother. And my grandmother says, "Get out of here," she says. "You're too old for my daughter." She says, "I remember you herding goats at Shemina." In any event, he caught my mother's eye. So when he went overseas, they were running back and forth, and then when they got back, got engaged, and of course they got married in 1920. Got back from war in 1918 or whatever it was. But yeah, my grandmother was not happy about that. My poor mother, living in a third floor apartment, had my dad, his brother, their compare Vito. She had all these three guys living, doing all the laundry for all of them as they worked by there. So anyway, that's Grandma's story. I was going to add one point. I learned that they came through Ellis Island, and the reason they had to go through Ellis Island is because they came steerage. If they had the money to have a suite in the boat, it would have gone right to the port of New York and bypassed Ellis Island. I don't know if you guys are aware of that.
No, I never.
Yeah, that's how it worked. If you went steerage, you went through Ellis Island, you were processed. If you had the money to be in the upper deck, you went first. Right. So that's that. So that's part of your heritage. You want to add something to that?
Yeah.
Well,
Sandwich.
what's cute about the story is when,
Speak up, honey. I can hear you.
when they left the house, when Daddy went to see them, when Grandma and then her daughters came to visit, he told his buddies, he says, when that little girl grows up, I'm going to marry her. And they laughed at him because she was, 12 years old and he was 22. They said, she's nothing but a kid. He said, that's okay, I'm going to marry her. Well, at that time, they weren't allowed to date. There was no going out on dates or anything. And in the interim, there were other men that, as she grew older, because they were married when she was 18, they would ask my grandfather for her hand. And at that time, most of the time, if the fathers got together and decided the kids were going to get married, that was it. You had nothing to say. But thankfully, my grandfather didn't feel that was correct, so he would ask my mother, Mary so and so would like to marry you. She would say, no, Pa, I don't want him. I don't like him. So then I asked her one time. I says, Mom, I said, if you were never allowed to go out on a date with Daddy, I says, how did you know that when he wanted to marry you, that you wanted to marry him? She said, I would sit on the front porch and wait for him to come up the street. She says, he always looked so, he'd put his fedora on, and I'd see him and my heart would go pitter patter, pitter patter. But there was no such thing as going out on a date. So one time my father asked my grandfather if he could take her to the movies on Sunday. And my grandfather said, sure. But when he went over there to pick her up, they were all dressed up. Grandpa, Grandma, Aunt Rose, Aunt Margaret.
Everybody went.
Yeah, we're going to the
He said he
movie.
had to take them all. He says, not only that, they didn't even let me sit next to her. They put me on my He says, I never asked him again.
Yeah, my dad, I never asked you to go to show it.
There was a story that your father also orchestrated the kidnapping of my grandmother.
Grandpa
she
couldn't
could get
talk to
married?
them for weeks.
Yeah.
Aunt Margaret and Grandpa's best buddy wanted to get married. And they were really in love. But my grandfather didn't like him because he thought he was kind of a playboy. And he said, there's no way you're going to marry him. So without telling my mother, along with Aunt Margaret and the guy that she wanted to marry and my father, because my father had a car, they decided to fake this kidnapping because they knew that if they kept her overnight, that they'd have to get married, otherwise it would be a scandal. So Aunt Margaret said the plan was that she was gonna be walking home from work, and one of them would be at the wheel of the car, and then Sam, the guy that she married, jumped out and threw a sack over her and dragged her into the car. She says, and
This is true.
I remember they kept telling me you're supposed to be, and she says I was going, help, help. Well, anyhow, they threw her in the car and they drove to another friend's house that lived in Harvard, Illinois, and they stayed overnight. So when Grandpa was telling me this, I says, you drove her, you stayed overnight. He said, no, he said he had a sister. It was just a guy and his sister. He says, she slept in the room with the sister and we slept on the floor. But then they got married because my grandfather thought she was disgraced, after having been away. But
That's my great grandma.
Oh, there you go.
Disgrace of the family.
One more grandpa story.
but the upshot of the deal was that
Oh,
grandma
boy.
was so
It's
upset
messed up now.
that he put this disgrace on the family. He said, your mother didn't talk to me for about a month.
One day, my dad was talking to a tenant, and they were talking about, the guy was talking about the thing festival up in Woodstock.
Oh,
So, the guy's telling my dad that he had gone to it's not a festival, what's it called, a
It's
concert?
called Woodstock. It was
Woodstock. So Woodstock, anyway, this
You
guy,
mean like that concert in New York? That thing?
so, anyway, this guy's telling my dad about the concert in Woodstock. My dad says, oh yeah, he says, I went to Woodstock.
no.
He was talking about the time
Woodstock.
that he was living in the railroad cars up in Woodstock, Illinois.
Yeah, there is.
And this
a-
guy's thinking my dad's talking about that. He says, you went to Woodstock? I said, yeah!
No, he was renting the house on Mohawk Street, and it was a Sunday, and on Sundays, Grandma's house was like open house. Everybody just stopped in the evening, so she always had, chicken in the oven and sausage and everything. Well, he rang the phone and he said, he was a black man, he said, Mr. LaSusa, I know the rent's due, he says, I'm gonna bring it over. And Grandpa said, no, he said, that's okay. He says, during the week is fine, because it was a Sunday. The poor guy had to take 2 buses to get from there to the house. No, I'm bringing it over. So my father said, you want to come? So he came over. When he came in, Grandpa was sitting on the porch with all of his men. They were enjoying their beer and their wine and everything. And Auntie Rosie and I were at the sink in the counter making this big salad. So he came in and he said, smells good in here. So Grandma says, well, you're welcome to stay and have something to eat. We'll be eating in a little while. She says, but if you want to, she says, go and join Mr. LaSusa on the porch. She says, and have a glass of wine or a beer or something. Well, when he got out there, Grandpa was expounding about when he was in Woodstock. So anyhow, we saw this guy, Auntie Rose and I saw him. He's looking at Grandpa. So Auntie Rose gives me the elbow and says, Daddy's talking about Woodstock, Illinois. This guy's thinking of the Woodstock Rock Festival.
I just told that story just now.
He said, Mr. LaSusa, you all was in Woodstock? My father was sure I was in Woodstock. And Auntie Rose and I are leaning over the sink laughing. None of us bothered to tell him he's not talking about the Rock Festival. That guy went home believing that Grandpa was a real hepcat.
Anybody got any questions?
My TED Talk.
It wasn't just the funny things about
Who's got a
Grandpa and
question?
Grandma. When Matthew and Larry were
Art
small,
wanted to say something.
their 2 older cousins, Michael and Arthur, we were all by Grandma's house, and that was when we were living in the 3 flat. It was a big building. So, I don't know, either you or Matt asked if they had to take a bus to school or walk. And I guess it was Michael said, he says, you got the helicopter.
Yeah, take the helicopter.
Oh, yeah, right.
They
Where
had-
do you park the
they had to
helicopter?
convince that
They
flew a helicopter to St.
Matthew
Pat's
and
High
Larry
School.
believing that there was a helicopter parked on the roof
You guys don't have
They
instructions.
used to fly to school in the helicopter. So they came back another Sunday, said, and Arthur and Michael were there, and they says, Auntie Mel, would you take us up and show us the helicopter on the roof? And I saw Grandpa's got the latch locked. I says, we came, you know.
I wanted to say something.
I've had the pleasure of taking Sam and Kathy and Auntie Mel and Auntie Rose and Chris and I all been up to Laughlin gambling together. And let me tell you how much of a gold horseshoe he's got up his ass. But how cheap he is. Kathy and I and Rosie, we're all over the place. You know, we're pumping in the max and everything. I'm sitting at the bar with Sam, I'm playing the dollar poker slots, and here's Sam playing the poker slots for a quarter at a time.
Oh no.
The only guy I know that can pick the middle of a straight flush, missing he had a 4, 5, 7, 8 of clubs, puts in a quarter. What do I do? Should I keep this? He hits it and he hits the frickin' straight flush out of it. So instead of 250 coins, I think you got 25 quarters back.
I'm gonna take the girls home. We all have school and work in the morning, so.
Oh,
I'd
no.
like to say, I know.
None of that.
I'd like to say it was wonderful to see you all.
It was nice seeing you.
Angela, thank you for coming.
Girls are
Happy
so
birthday,
cute.
thank you for everything.
Thank you.
And hopefully we'll get to do this again.
She was a worthy water.
Bye, it was nice meeting you.
She's pretty good.
Sneak up under the wall.
She's quiet.
Like a shark.
Where's Opie?
She went inside.
All right, I'll see you tomorrow.
Only keep the ants out of the pants.
Yeah, I get that.
We hear you. Everyone be safe on your trip.
Alright, so nobody wants to roast Papa? We haven't heard any roasts.
It's a roast of the family all the time.